So I wanted to make this video for almost months now, but I kept telling myself I just do it later. There's a pretty good reason why it's been difficult for me to make my daily quota videos, which is why I've only been posting like 2 videos a day. Only 2, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. Usually in a perfect world, it would be like 2.5 or something like that, 2.3, whatever. It's because I've been burnt out of the game for quite a while. I kind of explained this in the past, but I've never really went too in-depth on it. So as you already know, since Yu-Gi-Oh is, I guess, pretty much my job, it's difficult for me to also make it my hobby, my spare time, and the only thing I ever want to think of in my life. I've been told that my mentality is really bad and I should breathe Yu-Gi-Oh 18 plus hours a day if I want to get to the next level, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Even today's format where I get to play Crystron, which I absolutely love considering the fact that it is the most fun I've had in a while, I still can't say that I'm really having a blast. It's not that I don't like playing the deck, it's just that I'm not a fan of playing against the other decks that exist in the current environment. Whether we're talking post-Alliance Insight, pre-Battles of Legend, or post-Battles of Legend, pre-Duelist Advance, or even post-Duelist Advance, I'm just not seeing any difference. The game has pretty much remained the same for, all these months. We just went from Raziel Fiendsmith to pure Raziel to Raziel Mitsurugi to Raziel Gagaga and Raziel Mitsurugi being the #1 top performing decks in the TCG. Konami just keeps pumping out new sets and support as if people cared about the new decks, but honestly, unless they really just support like the best decks, it's usually just not impactful enough. And this is not me bashing on Konami at all, because I actually think they've done a remarkable job with their legacy support of old decks, most notably in Battles of Legend, Monster Mayhem. And even Duelist Advance was really good. Vanquish Soul is about to become broken, and it's not even like the deck was playable this year at all. But the problem for me is that Raziel-based decks and Malice are so much better than anything else that the only way to make anything matter is by creating even better legacy support. Which clearly is not really happening, so we're kind of just coping and looking at objectively worse options. We all know deep down that the 2 decks that will be the most dominant at the WCQs will obviously be Raziel and Malice, because the competition really isn't that fierce. Again, Vanquish Soul is a great deck, and I think it is part of the top 3 best decks, but obviously that's something that we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm saying this because I really don't like any of the decks at all, including Vanquish Soul even. Playing against Malice is frustrating, since if you don't draw a turn skip hand shop against them and they don't break, they FTK you. And playing against Raziel is frustrating since they play tons of non-engine on top of having cards like X Raziel, which naturally cracks boards. This might make mirror match dynamics interesting since you've got an inherent out detonator, which other decks struggle with. But when you gotta play the best deck in order to be the best deck, this is where I lose interest. Like I said, I don't find any of these decks enjoyable whatsoever, and even though I see them as the best decks, I'm not delusional obviously, I don't see them as optimal strategies, at least for me. Since I've been playing Crystron since November, I feel experienced to the point where even though my deck is objectively worse than the best decks like Raziel and Malice, to me it doesn't matter because I feel like I can pilot the deck to a point where people are obviously going to be clueless about it, and I can perform better than Raziel and Malice, so it really feels to me as if it's an even better deck. Like I said, people keep misplaying against me, they clearly have no idea what I'm really trying to do, which obviously works in my favor. And I initially thought that the deck would be a one-trick pony where it only performs well on release, then people learn how to counter it, and then the deck becomes dead, but that is not really true. Nobody really has the time to look into every single deck in depth to learn their ins and outs, they've got better things to do with their lives. But going back to why I still play Crystron, I just have fun with it, not only because the deck itself is really cool and intricate, but also because it allows me to not have to indulge in all the mirror match bullshit. I really don't want to lose to Drool and Shummies, I don't want to lose to Bestials, and I don't want my opponents to have the same deck list as me. Because that way I can give myself a clear edge in the competitive scene while having fun, which is a big W for me. However, there is a massive problem. Crystron is not getting any stronger, whereas everything else is. There are more and more decks to worry about every single time a new set comes out, and for some reason, every core set significantly boosts the already existing top tier decks. If Raziel wasn't good enough on release, well, Supreme Darkness gave them Twins of the Eclipse as well as the first wave of support for Mitsurugi. Not satisfied? Don't worry, because Alliance Insight gave them the second wave of Mitsurugi support. Still not happy? I got you, because Duelist Advance is giving them Valon the Psychic Skyblaster as well as the Gagaga cards. It's crazy, like the rich keeps getting richer and my Crystron deck is not really getting any better. This means that naturally as the format progresses, things just keep getting worse and worse for me. By the way, I just want to make it clear that I absolutely can play a deck like Raziel if I really want to, but then again, if I play that, I'm just not seeing how I will have an edge over the other 1000 plus players that are doing the exact same thing as me. I don't particularly care about playing the best deck. I will do it if I think it's a good strategy, but I want to play, like I said, the strategy that I think is the best for me very specifically, and what matters to me is being the #1 player with a particular deck. I would also like to reiterate the fact that I despise this format with all my heart, as I find it very boring and repetitive as hell, but I also truly hate the format because of another reason. The power level of decks is just off the charts, and if you're not drawing a hand trap going second, you probably just die. So in my top 32 match of YCS Quito Ecuador, I looked in my hand, I had 2 bricks, 3 engine cards, and 0 hand traps, and I basically told myself, okay, I know my opponent is playing Reziel Mitsurugi, if he has any starter, the game is over, I'm just gonna scoop. 5 seconds later, my opponent proceeded to use Mitsurugi prayers, and I scooped up my cards right away without thinking about anything else, because there is no way I'm breaking 7+ disruptions with 3 engine cards. I then proceeded to win game 2 despite getting hit by 2 hand traps and Feather Duster and full combo because, you know, Crystron best deck obviously, check out my Crystron spreadsheet. However, on game 3, I looked at my hand of Dueling Logbird, Dominus Impulse, and, you know, some Crystron cards, which, I mean, it's completely fine. My Droll got hit by Called by the Grave, which is pretty unfortunate, but it happens all the freaking time. And then my Dominus Impulse was just not enough because my opponent had the extender to push through it, so yeah, in other words, I got 3 card comboed, whereas my hand could not really play through you know, again, like 7-8+ disruptions. 0 interactions, 0 back and forth, 0 battle phase, nothing, and it's really not like if I played another deck, it would have been different. I realized that if both players play perfect, most games are just hand comparison turbo regardless of your deck, so your main win condition usually is just sacking your opponent or hoping that your opponent plays wrong. But let's be real, Reziel is not a complicated deck whatsoever, it's actually very simple and way too powerful if you're playing a sub-engine like Mitsurugi. I have no problem with decks being simple, like Sword Soul for example, because those decks were fair even when they were top tier. I also have no problem with decks being powerful like Memento because that deck is super complicated, and you should get rewarded for knowing exactly how to pilot such a weird and complicated deck. My issue is just when the #1 best deck can be picked up by anyone, mastered in a few days or weeks, and consistently win against everyone and everything. There's also less skill expression when we already know what the meta for these decks are. Like, we already know that a good deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs at least a 93 whatever plus % consistency level. It should be able to draw 2+ hand traps on average every single hand, and it should play minimal bricks, like 4 or 5 bricks maximum. But a deck like Reziel Mitsurugi or Reziel Gagaga naturally solves that problem without even trying because, you know, it's like very obvious to figure out and it just makes the job super easy to figure out for everyone. A deck like Crystron, for example, however, is really difficult to figure out since it is mostly made up of 2-card combos and typically plays a sub-engine. There's a lot of skill expression in Crystron because, what non-engine cards are you playing in your deck? They have to obviously make sense with your engine, and also which sub-engine are you playing in your deck because it really does matter. And there's a lot of options. There's Millennium, Horus, Kashtira, Speedroid, the list goes on. There's just infinite things that you can do in a deck like this. As a matter of fact, one thing I think just makes this game overall worse is the proliferation of 1-card combos. Those decks that can play a lot of 1-card combos and don't even play any 2-card combos just created a dynamic where the only way to keep up with them is to try to do the same thing and also just play as many or if not more hand traps. It really isn't that uncommon nowadays to find a deck that can play like 16 or 17 1-card starters as well as like 16, 17, even like sometimes 20 hand traps. And it is crazy to think that this is where the game has been going all these years and that the only natural solution to power creep at this point is even more power creep. Yeah, what's the next step? Like 0-card combos that can play through 3 hand traps? Like, come on, get out of here. With that said, I decided to approach this game with a different mindset. I don't want to play by these rules, and I just want to do what I want to do instead of what people tell me to do. I don't really care about playing the best deck unless I really do believe that it is the best strategy for me, but usually that's not really the case unless it's a deck that is really complicated and a deck that I really do believe that I can pilot more, like better than like 99% of the player base that is utilizing this deck. I just want to play, like I said, the deck that I believe in the most and the deck that I enjoy the most. I top 3 consecutive YCSs with Crystron in these Reziel and Malice dominated formats, so I was able to destroy the meta while also having a blast. So yeah, everything is not doom and gloom. You can still enjoy a shitty format like this one and the one that we're headed into. But yeah, you gotta condition your brain to think differently, I guess I want to say. If you're fed up of those hand comparison mirror matches, play something that people will panic against. You gotta be the apex predator, and also, if I had to say something, it would be the fact that even though the best deck looks like it is the apex predator, usually it ends up being the prey because it has a huge target behind its back. So yeah, sometimes the #1 best deck might actually be like worse than a rogue deck almost for you. Depends on your RNG, I guess, because sometimes random players can play the best deck and actually do super well too. But yeah, in other words, I hate this format and I've been hating Yu-Gi-Oh! Since Rage of the Abyss, except for the YCS Mexico format. That event was goated and we need more like these. But I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know how you feel about the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh! And also also the format that we are going into. I'll see you guys very soon with another video. Peace.